Well, the Oriental doesn't put the same high price on life as does the Westerner. Life is plentiful, life is cheap in the Orient. And as the philosophy of the Orient expresses it, life is not important.
General Westmoreland, despite the 10 stripes of merit badges and other ribbons, was not only a racist, he was a liar. And I could have proved it halfway through the war. I could have, if I had the courage of Bradley Manning, given to the New York Times a cable that showed that Westmoreland and his deputy, General Abrams, were lying through their teeth. I carry that with me now, with the realization that those of you who know the Vietnam Memorial, you know it's in the shape of a V. Well, that whole left arm of the V wouldn't be there now. Wouldn't be there now because there'd be no names to chisel into that granite if the war stopped shortly after I learned of this. Let me explain what happened. When I came into the CIA during the presidency of John Kennedy, there were some pretty bright people that came in with me, and one had the name of Sam Adams. Long story short, he was given the account on Vietnam, and believe it or not, early 1964, no one in the CIA had counted how many communists in Vietnam we were up against. Well, Sam set to it. He was a terrific analyst. He put together all these POW reports and everything else, and he came up with a figure of about 600,000. Then he went out to Saigon, and he found out that, whoops, no, Westmoreland, General Westmoreland would not allow any more than half that to be counted as enemy. So Sam and I used to have lunch. I said, Sam, what possible incentive could General Westmoreland have to say that there are only half as many enemy forces as there really are? And Sam said, Ray, you won't believe this, but I just got a cable in. The cable was dated August 20th, 1967, okay? And it was from Westmoreland's deputy, because Westmoreland happened to be out of the country, and it was from Creighton Abrams, after whom we have a tank named now. And he set out the rationale for the deception. Abrams wrote that the new higher numbers, the ones that Sam had proved to be accurate and had been accepted by every intelligence organization in the government except the Army, because of Westmoreland, those had to be overcome by the command position, which would allow no more than 299,000 Vietnamese communists under arms. Does 299 give you some pause and you get a clue there of what's going on, okay? Sam's number was 600,000. This is what Abrams wrote. He said, we can't accept the figures that Sam Adams and others have adduced because, quote, we have been projecting an image of success over recent months. Does that sound familiar? An image of success over recent months. And then he cautioned and he said, if the higher figures became public, quote, all available caveats and explanations would not prevent the press from drawing an erroneous and gloomy conclusion, period, end quote. You know, further proof were needed about lying. And of course, just a few months later, the Tet Offensive showed that the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong couldn't possibly have mounted a countrywide offensive, hitting every hamlet, every city, without about 600,000 troops. Now, the good news is that there was someone with more guts than I had. His name was Ellsberg, first name Daniel. And he doesn't crow about this because he focuses in on the Vietnam, the Pentagon Papers, which he released by his own admission, far too late to have a big impact on the war. But he should admit this, because this is what he did just at about the time that I saw that cable from General Abrams. Sam Adams, he was, he played by the rules. He didn't want to leak to the press or anything. But Dan Ellsberg saw what was happening. He had Sam's numbers, and so he leaked them to the New York Times. Now, you have to understand, in those days, the New York Times was an independent newspaper, and they actually would publish things like this. Now, Dan learned that President Lyndon Johnson was about to bow to Pentagon pressure to widen the war into Cambodia, Laos, and up to the Chinese border, and maybe even beyond. Later, it became clear that when Dan Ellsberg leaked Sam Adams' figures, together with other unauthorized disclosures in the Times, that the Pentagon had requested 206,000 more troops. Those disclosures prevented a wider war. You'll have to take my word for that. Here's Lyndon Johnson. He complained to a small gathering, quote, "The leaks to the New York Times hurt us. We have no support for the war. I would have given Westy the 206,000 men. Wow. So speaking truth to power, or leaking truth to power, can prevent a wider war. So, what am I saying here? There are people with more courage than I, and equal courage to Bradley Manning and Daniel Ellsberg. One of them, or it seems very interesting that most of them happen to be women. And I found that in going around the last 10 years, a lot of the people in the forefront of the struggle for truth, and most of the people with courage, happen to be women, okay? And here's one that I want you to pay really good attention to, because she caused, well, I won't spoil it for you. May we have the next, please?
But right now, as we talk about sparks of a revolution, from Wael Gonim to a young woman, I want to turn to a video recording that was posted to Facebook 3 weeks ago. That was January 18th, and then went viral across Egypt. It's recorded by a young Egyptian named Asma Mahfouz. In the video, the veiled 26-year-old activist appealed to her fellow citizens to join her in protest at Tahrir Square on January 25th to demand their rights. Asma Mahfouz is one of the founders of the April 6th Youth Movement. The group's been credited with playing a leading role in organizing the January 25th protests. This is Asma.
4 Egyptians have set themselves on fire to protest humiliation and hunger and poverty and degradation they had to live with for 30 years. 4 Egyptians have set themselves on fire thinking maybe we can have a revolution like Tunisia. Maybe we can have freedom, justice, honor, and human dignity. Today, one of these 4 has died, and I saw people commenting and saying, "May God forgive him, he committed a sin and killed himself for nothing." People have some shame. I posted that I, a girl, am going down to Tahrir Square, and I will stand alone. And I'll hold up a banner. Perhaps people will show some honor. I even wrote my number, so maybe people will come down with me. No one came except 3 guys. 3 guys and 3 armored cars of riot police. And tens of hired thugs and officers came to terrorize us. They shoved us roughly away from the people. But as soon as we were alone with them, they started to talk to us. They said, "Enough, these guys who burned themselves were psychopaths." Of course, on all national media, whoever dies in protest is a psychopath. If they were psychopaths, why did they burn themselves at the Parliament building? I'm making this video to give you one simple message. We want to go down to Tahrir Square on January 25th. If we still have honor and want to live in dignity on this land, we have to go down on January 25th. We'll go down and demand our rights, our fundamental human rights.
Again, that video posting by the young Egyptian activist Asma Mahfouz on January 18th, 1 week before the start of the Egyptian uprising. While much of the youth organizing in Egypt has been over the internet, much of it has been through anonymous postings. In her video postings, Asma Mahfouz speaks directly to the camera and identifies herself. The boldness of this act, speaking out so forcefully as a woman, inspired many others to start posting their images online as well. On the eve of the protest, Asma posted a follow-up video outlining some of her expectations.
It's now 10:30 p.m. on January 24th, 2011. Tomorrow's the 25th, the day we've been waiting for, the day we all worked so hard for. The most beautiful thing about it is that those who worked on this were not politicians at all. It was all of us, all Egyptians. We worked hard. Children no older than 14. They printed the poster and started distributing it after prayers. Old people in their 60s and 70s helped as well. People distributed it everywhere they could, in taxis, at the metro, in the street, in schools, universities, companies, government agencies. All of Egypt awaits tomorrow. I know we are all nervous right now and anxious, but we all want to see tomorrow's event happen and succeed. I'd like to tell everyone that tomorrow is not the revolution and is not the day we'll change it all. No, tomorrow is the beginning of the end. Tomorrow, if we make our stand despite all the security may do to us and stand as one in peaceful protest, it will be the first real step on the road to change. The first real step that will take us forward and teach us a lot of things. Our solidarity and planning is a success in itself. To simply know that we must demand our rights, that is success.
Asma Mahfouz. The next day after that recording, hundreds of thousands of Egyptians poured into Cairo's Tahrir Square, Liberation Square, to call for the ouster of President Mubarak and an end to his regime. The turnout was unprecedented, even among the organizers, including the April 6th youth movement. The next day, Asma Mahfouz posted another video with her reaction. She called the demonstrations the happiest day of her life, but said there's still more work to do.
The people want to bring down the regime. This is what we were all chanting yesterday, January 25th, 2011. Thousands upon thousands. I could not count how many there were. Demonstrations from all sides. Riot police could not control the sheer numbers. What we learned yesterday is that power belongs to the people, not to the thugs. Power is in unity, not in division. Yesterday, we truly lived the best moments of our lives. We learned that the Egyptian people are not chaotic or disorderly. The government keeps saying that we are a chaotic people and a revolution will lead to chaos. Yesterday, we were truly one hand, concerned for one another. Yesterday, not even one girl was harassed, even among those thousands. No one stole anything. No one struck anyone. No fights broke out. We were defending each other. Everyone was concerned for one another. Some bought water bottles and distributed them. Others distributed sandwiches. We all said it was from our hearts. Long live Egypt. Some boys and girls even cleaned the streets of trash and garbage. This is the Egyptian people that we have always dreamed of. I can now say that I am proud to be Egyptian. I truly wish to kiss every Egyptian's forehead and say thank you for being Egyptian. I never imagined that I would see this, but we must continue. The riot police was after us until 5 a.m., chasing us to beat and arrest us. Yesterday, we saw them scared. Live ammunition and rubber bullets and tear gas and water cannons to break us up. But we did not break up, and we're still united.
That was Asma Mahfouz, 26-year-old Egyptian activist, part of the April 6th youth movement.